After finishing an exhausting 18-hour shift at the hospital, all I wanted was to collapse into bed. I dragged myself to the front door, slipped the key into the lock, and froze. It wouldn't turn. My key didn't fit. Confused, I tried again, jiggling the knob, but it was useless. The lock had been changed. My heart sank. Something was wrong. I rang the bell, and after a moment, the door opened. Standing there was my stepmother, arms crossed, smirking as if she'd been waiting for this moment. "You can't come in," she said coldly. "Not unless you pay us $26,000. At first, I thought she was joking. My mind was too foggy from the long shift to process her words. "What are you talking about?" I asked. She explained that my late father had left debts, and that I needed to cover them if I wanted to stay in the house. But I knew my father. He was careful with money, never reckless. Something didn't add up. I reminded her that this house had been in my father's name for decades, and I had lived there my whole life. It wasn't hers to control. But she smirked again. "Not anymore." Turns out, while I was drowning in work and grief after my father's passing, she had quietly transferred ownership into her name. She had legal paperwork in hand, ready to wave in my face. I felt sick. Not only had I lost my father, but now the woman he married was trying to strip me of the only home I had left. I begged her to reconsider, telling her I didn't have that kind of money. She shrugged. "Then find somewhere else to live. This is mine now." And with that, she slammed the door in my face. I spent that night in my car, exhausted, angry, and heartbroken. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever felt before. But as the days passed, my sorrow turned into determination. I wasn't going to let her steal my father's legacy from me. I contacted a lawyer and handed him everything. My father's old documents, emails, even witnesses who knew my father never intended to leave her everything. Slowly, the truth came to light. My stepmother had manipulated my grieving father in his final days, pressuring him to sign papers he barely understood. There were irregularities all over the documents. In court, she tried to play the grieving widow, crying and claiming I was just being greedy. But the judge wasn't buying it. Especially when we showed the evidence of her coercion. Witnesses testified that she had isolated my father, keeping even close family away while pushing him to sign new ownership papers. It was a textbook case of undue influence. The court ruled in my favor. The house was restored under my name, and she was ordered to vacate within 30 days. I'll never forget the look on her face when the judgment was read. The smugness she wore that night at the door had vanished, replaced with shock and rage. She tried appealing, of course, dragging it out as long as she could. But every time, the evidence spoke louder than her tears. She lost again and again. When she finally moved out, the house was a mess. She had left trash, broken furniture, and even carved nasty words into the walls. But it didn't matter. It was mine again. I spent months repairing it, pouring love back into the place that had once felt like a prison. Slowly, it became a home again, not because of the walls, but because of the memories of my father that lived there. Word spread through the family about what she had tried to do. Her reputation collapsed. The same relatives she once flaunted her wealth to now avoided her completely. Meanwhile, I continued my work at the hospital, knowing my father would have been proud. He raised me to fight for what's right, and I had honored that. There are still nights when I remember standing outside that locked door, humiliated and broken. But now, instead of pain, I feel pride. Because I didn't let her win. She wanted $26,000. Instead, she lost everything. And I walked back into my father's house, not as a victim, but as the rightful heir to his legacy.